What happens when one of the biggest stars in the world pauses and looks back at the road that brought her here? For Taylor Swift, the answer seems to be less about the fame, the records, or the enormous stages, and more about the small moments that quietly shaped everything. As fans reflect on Taylor's incredible journey, one detail in particular has resonated deeply: the reminder that behind the global superstar is someone who has spent years growing, changing, learning, and carrying pieces of her younger self along the way. At first glance, Taylor Swift's career can look almost impossible to comprehend. She began as a young songwriter with a guitar and a dream, gradually building an audience through songs that felt personal and familiar. Over the years, her sound evolved from country beginnings into pop, alternative-inspired storytelling, and a much broader musical world. Each era brought something different, but there was always one constant: the ability to turn personal experiences and emotions into stories that millions of listeners could recognize as their own. But here is the part that makes her journey feel different. Taylor did not simply move from one successful album to another. She grew up in front of an audience. Fans who discovered her when she was young were also growing older alongside her, watching her change her style, challenge expectations, experiment creatively, and become more confident in her own voice. That shared passage of time created something much deeper than ordinary fandom. For many listeners, Taylor's music became a soundtrack to their own lives. And that is why looking back can feel surprisingly emotional. When Taylor reflects on earlier chapters of her career, those memories are not only about her. They also belong to the people who were there listening. A particular song can suddenly bring back a school memory, a friendship, a first heartbreak, a long drive, or a moment when everything seemed uncertain. In that sense, Taylor's journey has become intertwined with the personal histories of millions of people. Perhaps the most moving detail is the contrast between the young Taylor audiences once saw and the person she has become today. The girl who once dreamed of being heard could hardly have imagined the scale of the world that would eventually surround her. Stadiums, sold-out shows, major awards, cultural conversations, and an audience spread across generations are now part of her story. Yet when she looks back, the early chapters still matter. They are reminders of where the journey started. That idea has become especially powerful because Taylor's career has never been perfectly predictable. She has reinvented herself repeatedly, sometimes taking creative risks that could easily have divided her audience. Instead of staying in one comfortable lane, she continued exploring. Country became pop, pop became something more experimental. Earlier albums were revisited through new recordings. Old chapters were given new meaning. And through all of it, she kept returning to the same fundamental skill: storytelling. But what makes that evolution so meaningful is that it was never only about becoming bigger. It was also about becoming more herself. With every era, Taylor appeared to understand something new about creativity, public expectations, relationships, ambition, and identity. Looking back therefore becomes more than nostalgia. It becomes a way of recognizing how much can change when someone continues moving forward without completely abandoning where they began. And fans noticed that emotional connection long ago. For some, Taylor's songs were there during their teenage years. For others, they arrived during college, a new relationship, a difficult transition, or a completely different stage of adulthood. The remarkable thing is that the same artist can mean something different to each generation. A song written years ago can suddenly feel new because the listener has changed. That may be why the quiet moments often stand out more than the spectacular ones. A massive performance can be unforgettable, but a simple reflection on the past can sometimes carry even more emotional weight. There is something universally relatable about looking at an old photograph, remembering an earlier dream, or realizing how much life has changed since a certain moment. Taylor's story simply happens to exist on a much larger stage. And there is another layer to this story. Taylor's journey shows how unusual it is to maintain a connection with an audience while constantly evolving. Many artists become associated with one particular period or sound. Taylor has managed to make change itself part of her identity. Her fans do not necessarily expect her to remain the same. They often expect the opposite. They wait to see what the next chapter will reveal. That makes her reflections on the past feel less like a goodbye and more like a conversation between different versions of the same person. The younger songwriter is still present in the stories, melodies, and emotions that came before. The difference is that the person telling those stories now has years of experience behind her. And maybe that is the detail fans find hardest to ignore. Taylor Swift's journey is not simply a story about becoming famous. It is a story about time. It is about watching someone grow while the audience grows with her. It is about realizing that the songs that once sounded like youthful dreams can eventually become memories of an entire generation. As Taylor continues into whatever comes next, that history will remain part of the appeal. There will always be new music, new performances, new creative decisions, and new chapters to discuss. But the earlier chapters will never completely disappear. They remain preserved in the songs and memories that helped millions of people through their own moments. So perhaps the most emotional part of Taylor Swift looking back is not what she achieved. It is the realization that so many people were looking back with her. Her journey became part of their journeys, too. And after all these years, that connection may be one of the most meaningful things she has created. What do you think is the most emotional part of Taylor Swift's journey? The young songwriter she once was, the artist she has become, or the memories fans created along the way? Do you think her ability to evolve while staying connected to her past is one of the biggest reasons her music continues to resonate? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts with other Taylor Swift fans.